Hello everyone, and welcome to a quick new development update. We will begin with the leak itself, then go more in depth on the development cycle of Breath of the Wild 2, and how long it has taken, using interviews and announcements from Nintendo. As you all know, common sense applies with any rumor or leak. We are fortunate enough on this channel to have a lot of friends and reliable sources, and while we have gotten a few wrong in the past, most of the leaks and rumors and even predictions when it comes to new Zelda games have been scarily accurate. If you don't know us, or you don't think so, that's fine. Just take a look back at a lot of our past videos. We don't approve of misinformation or want to risk our credibility by talking about every single rumor or leak that is sent to us. This has led some people thinking we were getting information from the voice actors or other friends we may have at Nintendo or in the industry. This is why it's very important to say, and for you all to understand, although we are friends with or have had people on our channel that work for Nintendo, other studios, or have even worked directly on Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, this rumor does not come from any of them. Although, as a Zelda fan, it would be amazing if all of our different friends at Nintendo did tell us everything they knew. As a content creator focusing on Zelda, it would be horrible because we would have all this information that we would not be able to talk about in videos because our friendship and trust is way more important than a few extra views. Like a lot of leaks or rumors we are sent, this is from a random leaker, and I'll go more in depth on it after. To put it simply, the person does claim to work for Nintendo as a writer, and states Breath of the Wild 2 has been in the localization phase for a while. Whether that's weeks, months, 6 months, we don't know. And yes, at first, there's not much there, but there actually could be if we put it with official information that we do know. I'm sure a lot of us already thought Nintendo of America may have already began helping with localization, especially when a game is this big and not only has a ton of text that needs translated into different languages, but also needs to be halfway, if not most of the way finished before the process begins to record voiceovers for the game. We do not know if the recording process has begun with the voice actors, but we do have some information on this thanks to some friends we have who have voiced on small and large games. Some that you can listen to for yourself are the Age of Calamity and Breath of the Wild focused interviews we have had with the voice actors Sean Chiplock, who plays Revali, Tiba, and even the Great Deku Tree, Patricia Somerset, who plays Zelda, Andy Gibson, who plays old and young Impa, and Joe Hernandez, who plays Daruk and Yunobo. Some of them have been on our videos or podcasts, the 𝐓𝐼𝐬𝐭𝐽𝐠cast, several times, and each time they give a little bit more information about the voiceover process on not just Zelda games, but others as well. One thing we were told is that Age of Calamity began its recording around March and finished in June, just about 5 months before the game released. From what I remember, the original Breath of the Wild had a similar pattern. If the same pattern continues and Nintendo just happens to love recording Zelda games sometime around March to June, Breath of the Wild 2's audio recording could begin in less than a month from now. Again, this wasn't told to us, it's just speculation based on the last 2 Breath of the Wild games. Technically, the process could have already began if Nintendo wants to include voiceovers in the rumored trailer fans are expecting for the 35th anniversary. One theory that I have, finishing all of the audio in June gives just enough time for most of the audio to be finished for an official trailer or demo planned for E3 of that year, which also just happens to be in the middle of June, which makes us think Age of Calamity and other big games like Mario 3D All-Stars could have actually been meant to be revealed at E3 last year, but because it was cancelled, those reveals were held until later in the year. And yes, we will be having some of those voice actors and others back on our podcast, the 𝐓𝐼𝐬𝐭𝐽𝐠cast, when the game is released, if not even sooner. If Nintendo is getting ready to begin the voiceover process close to the months that the last 2 began, it would not only mean the leak from the email is true, but Breath of the Wild 2 is somewhat close to being finished. Speaking to a couple of our friends who have written for different games, they tell us usually the localization doesn't even begin until most of the game is done, and voiceovers don't begin until most or all of the script is done. But dialogue, story elements, or almost anything can end up being changed or new stuff added requires additional localization and voice actors to come back in. Sometimes this can lead to delays, but sometimes changes are made during the recording process or before, and the new audio can be switched before the original audio is even recorded, which wouldn't cause any delay at all. I've mentioned many times that I think Breath of the Wild 2 may be released this year. A lot of you have agreed in the comments, but some of you don't see how it would be possible at all, since Breath of the Wild took 6 years or longer and had several delays. Comment below if you want me to go even more in depth on this in a video for tomorrow, but to keep it simple for now, Breath of the Wild was only meant to take 3 years. Nintendo said this many times, but 2 major issues caused almost all of the delays, neither of which are a problem now. Nintendo said the cause for most of the delays was trying to get the physics engine to work properly with their game, and beginning development for a second console which required a completely different method of development. With Breath of the Wild 2, it's only being developed for one console. Their current Zelda team is larger than ever. They are now very experienced with developing using the engine and developing on the Switch. Almost all of the assets are already done. You may say, yeah, but they need a long time to come up with the story or events that happen. That's only about half right. You see, Nintendo stated Breath of the Wild 2 began as DLC for the original game, and we know most of the DLC for the original game was actually just leftover ideas and concepts that didn't make it into the original, such as the motorcycle and many other concepts found in their GDC presentation and released in their Creating a Champion book. Even some of the stuff we've seen in Breath of the Wild 2 has been pulled directly from concepts created for Breath of the Wild, such as a human Ganondorf and a giant floating island. With both of the main reasons for Breath of the Wild's delay no longer being an issue, if Breath of the Wild was meant to originally take just 3, possibly 4 years to develop, which included creating the entire engine, the art style, the world, and everything from the ground up, then creating Breath of the Wild 2 with most of the assets and ideas already made, it should take less than half of that time, and most of the work would be done creating the new ideas and areas. And again, a lot of that was already made, just left out of the game, like everyone's favorite hookshot, or the entire race of the Kokiri, and even the tiny lovable little Minish. I could go more in depth, but this was meant to be a short video. So tomorrow, we will have a video covering even more, along with any further Breath of the Wild 2 updates we may have, as well as answering any questions that you have commented below. We will also be discussing this again on our Zelda podcast, the 𝐓𝐼𝐬𝐭𝐿𝐼𝐭 Gamescast, which you can find the video for on here or just the audio version on iTunes. Thank you everyone who watched this video all the way through, and a special thank you to all of the Patreon supporters whose names are on screen right now.